Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Sunday evening, and it's time for the Thunder Room, named for my guest, the Thunderous One. And of course, we're also joined by another recent channel guest, Jay Corman Kane. So, welcome, Thunderous. Give us a brief intro and tell us what we're talking about today before I introduce JC as well.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lloyd, for the show tonight. This week, we're just going to touch on a couple of topics. One is the Pope's statements about all religions being acceptable to God. So we've got a couple of news clippings there. The recent court case with the gentleman who was silently praying, there's been an update with that, so we'll probably touch on that. But we'll link that with the video that you're going to play with reference to Rebecca Todd Peters, the Presbyterian pastor in America, and her comments about abortion. And I think that's pretty much the three things I will probably touch on today from my side.
Right. Yeah, I know you're not too well, so we'll try and keep it brief and then wrap up. And JC, welcome again, and thanks for the input. And also, please let everyone know about your books, your recent book release, and share your screen if you want to, let people know what you're putting out, where your books can be found, etc.
Thank you, Lloyd, and hi, Thunderous. Thank you for inviting me over for another conversation of very controversial topics. It's like the best way to actually end a week. My books, at the moment, I'm actually working on the next one, on my third one, which is the first one that has nothing to do with Islam. But I haven't got anything prepared like to screen share. If anybody actually follows me on X, they will see when the next one comes out and what the other book are about. And Amazon. But for now, we are not talking about books. We're just talking about very controversial topics. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to let the audience know you've released your second book, I believe, on Amazon.
Yes. So my first book is like a work of fiction, a little bit like the Da Vinci Code, but with Islam at the center, showing people debunking Islam like real time. And the second book is my story of going from not knowing anything about Islam to actually learning everything about Islam. The goal of the second book was for people to actually read it and become very aware of what Islam really is very quickly without getting into the details of the different factions within Islam or anything like this. Very quick book. I think it's about 91 pages long. And after that, anyone who has no idea about Islam, but they are very aware that there's a problem to do with that, they would just be up to speed and know that the whole thing is a fabrication and a lot more stuff. So, but now that Christmas is actually drawing near, I would go, the first one at least is more interesting, unveiling the myths and realities of Islam. For people watching this channel, they already know everything that they need to know about Islam. It's more for other people. So if they have friends or family members who are not interested in Islamic affairs, consider this as a Christmas present, and hopefully we get them to start paying attention, because we need people to wake up.
Yeah, so it's presented in a way that's not in your face factual like a picture. It is fiction, but it's based on the real Islam. And thanks for that. So Thunderous, over to you. I know you're not well, so yeah, I'll hand over to you.
Right, so I'm going to try and I'm just going to try and do something for the first time that I've not done before, and that is screen share. Right, so I'm going to ask the audience to be patient with me as I try and figure this out. It's the first time I'm doing this. So let's see if it works. Right, select a tab. So what do I want to do is this one here. Can anybody see that?
You need to share it, and then it'll pop up here where I will see it, and I can put it on the screen. There's nothing right now, so click share on the bottom center.
Okay.
You click share, bottom center, then on top of that menu, you click screen. So click the share button.
Oh, I got it. There you go. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Right, there we go. So the first subject I'd like to discuss is moving forward with the Pope's comments in recent months about as we can see from this headline, Pope Francis draws criticism for saying all religions are a path to God. So he's making a statement there, which is interesting to state during this particular period of time of history. Now, I think this particular one, he made this comment when over in the Far East. So there's only one God. Each of us has a language to arrive God, Francis said, as reported by the Catholic News website Crux Now. Some are Sheikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, and there are different paths to God. So what are your thoughts, guys, with a pope, the head of a church, probably the largest Christian denomination on earth, making that comments about all religions are a path to God? Or in this instance, Pope delivers religious identities are a gift from God. Do we have a problem with these statements?
I'd be cautious in that. I listened to a fairly lengthy hour-long discussion by a very well-known Catholic apologist on this topic. First, I'm aware that when people report about the Pope or about Catholicism, they have a tendency to slightly misrepresent or grossly misrepresent what is said, or to present it in a way that's not favorable. I mean, this is pretty common. That said, the Pope does have the habit of communicating very poorly his ideas, and this would, of course, be against the position of the doctrinal position of the Catholic Church. But I don't know that, because there may be some later statements or prior statements, context, where he says that these are ways for humans to approach God, that we want to reach God, that's why we have religion. But I don't think he necessarily is discussing in the context of they are all equally valid or all equally acceptable.
What about yourself, JC? What are your thoughts?
Well, pretty much like the same as Lloyd. I only read the headline, and that was it, because obviously it feels very, very bizarre. I haven't actually read the context. There must be context, because you cannot have a religious figure just saying all religions are fine. So it must be something. So when I read that, I thought, well, I was an atheist, and then I read the Quran, and I became a Christian. So if that's what he means by every religion leads to God, is like, well, I do actually empathize with that. It's part of my journey. But if you take that completely out of context, and then it means every religion is fine, providing that you believe in one God or in 100 gods. Actually, in the end, you are just a believer of the one God. I don't think that that's what he meant, because it didn't make sense. But I don't know more on this matter. I just found it very, very funny of how they put that on the headlines.
Yeah. He does have the habit of communicating poorly, and this does lead to embarrassments or to misunderstandings. This is something that we're aware of with this particular Pope. He says things that upset people.
Do you think that one of the reasons why he may have made comments like this, and there are two of them, basically saying the same thing, where he's trying to appease the world of religions, considering how divisive one particular religion is, creating schism on the world scene? So maybe using a language to try and unify. Do you think that could have been like
I do get the sense that I have, and I've actually had this conversation with others in the past. This particular Pope does seem to be trying to be ecumenical. He's trying to draw connections. He's trying to heal schisms, but he maybe is too generous. Maybe maybe he's simply not, I don't know, clear enough about these issues. But he does seem to be trying to want to build bridges, and maybe he's being too inclusive, too accommodating. There is that. I've had that impression with him.
Do you think there's a danger with that? Do you think there's a danger with it?
I think so. There comes a point where we have to be very clear about what is doctrine, what is truth, what is acceptable. There needs to be a line. And the Pope, even when I was growing up in South Africa, many non-Catholics trusted the Pope and felt that the Pope was a spokesman for Christianity. The Pope was a very strong representative, and they followed and respected the Pope, and they followed what he said. So even though they weren't they're not necessarily Catholics, he is kind of a leader for them. And when the Pope says something out of line, it disappoints people. So yeah, his words have impact. He needs to choose his words carefully.
It's interesting you should say that, because the Catholic Church, where the Pope heads up the denomination, that non-Catholic organizations would possibly, as you said there, even though they may not be a member of the Catholic Church, may look at the Catholic Church and the Pope with respect, and probably take cues from that for their own guidance or direction as well. So it's an interesting point that you make there. The concern for me in all of this is that when, this is the problem that the nation of Israel had. They kept compromising and getting drawn into false religions or worshiping false gods, and that is a repeat. That is a repeated pattern. And I think one of the most famous accounts, I think, well, there are many in the Bible, but certainly when you look at, say, 1 Kings chapter 18 verses 21 onwards, where Elijah is not talking to the Canaanite or the Philistine or the Amalekite priests, talking to the nation of Israel's priests, when he asks, how long will it be limited on two opinions? If Yahweh is the true God, worship him. If Baal's the true God, worship him. And I don't know if people are familiar with the account. I would thoroughly recommend it. It's from 1 Kings chapter 18 verses 21 onwards. Read it for yourself, because it's kind of amusing as well. But you get the point that even the first commandment in Exodus, is it chapter 20, verse 3, where it says, you should not have any other God in my presence. So the Bible is quite clear and black and white on what our standard of worship should be. The difficulty you have, though, is when there is a certain religion that when you start talking to them, and you've probably got experience of this, guys, when you start talking to people of the religion of peace and start trying to sort of like find some kind of interfaith commonality, who normally gives way in those discussions?
Christians. We see the Pope as a defender of the faith. I mean, even if you're not Catholic, I think at least where I came from, many saw the Pope as a defender of the faith, and you want to see him being such. And when there's compromise and when there's error or misunderstanding or confusion, it lets the side down.
Yeah. Right stuff, JC.
Well, I would understand that comment if what he meant is all religions are a path to God. But guys, read the Bible. If you are a Hindu or a Muslim or a Hare Krishna or whatever you are, that's fine. You're almost there. You believe in God. You believe in Satan. Now read the Bible. Okay, you're nearly there. If that's actually what he meant, fine. But saying basically that just as it sounds like at face value, like any religion is the path to eternal life, heaven, God, is no, that's absolutely not. So it feels like something big is missing there, and it is, yes, read the Bible, you are a believer, that's fine, because you are pretty much right, there is a God, but read the Bible and see if you find here the God that you think you're worshiping, because maybe you're worshiping something else or nothing at all. So it's only that
say there were
thing.
No, he didn't say there were equivalent paths. I mean, so there's that distinction to be made. But one thing I also may notice is that when the church in the past, the Catholic Church, has been very combative or confrontational, it created schism. And I think it's trying to do the opposite of that, trying to be more accommodating and inclusive and trying to draw people back, trying to recreate. The Catholic Church is trying to bring other churches back into the fold, into communion with Rome. So I think in this sense, they maybe be somewhat more ecumenical, and maybe they're going too far in that direction again.
Yeah, the difficulty in all of this as well is that when you start dealing with a religion of peace, the compromises are made on the part of the person discussing their faith with the religion of peace. You can start having discussions where you might use the name Yahweh, and a Muslim say, we'll choose Allah, but Allah's got 99 names, so we'll use the word Allah. They don't want to refer to Jesus as being the Son of God. They just want to use the word prophet. So you start finding in your compromises, everything is a compromise on your part and not their part. And pretty much soon enough, you'll have watered it all down your faith will be watered down. But by doing that, you're strengthening their position by making these compromises. So for me, when I hear dialogue like this, it doesn't bode well for me reading these things, because I think it can create a problem. Maybe in some parts of the world you can get away with this kind of language or this kind of discussion or this kind of a comment, but there are other places in the world where it could pose a problem.
JC,
right, so JC.
Oh yeah, so I really think that the message from him would have made more sense, at least to me. As I said, I don't know the full context. It's just to tell people, look, just read the Bible. It's been around for a while. You have access to it even free online. You have it in audiobooks. You have it everywhere. Just you are a believer or you are an atheist, whatever it is. Just read the Bible, just to get people to read it and see what happens. Yeah. You read that and you still say, oh, no, Islam is true, or Hinduism is true, or all of this is just about Sky Daddy and I don't care about it. That's fine, but read the book and see where that takes you. Because one of the features of the Bible is you will find something. Every person that I have heard that they have actually read the Bible, they have found something in there that they felt almost as if it was written for them and exclusively for them from the beginning of time. Even if that verse would apply to even thousands or millions of people, they would still point at that and says, no, that I feel like it was written exclusively for me. It's like, just read the Bible, let's see where it takes you before you commit to anything else. And if you don't like it, that's fine. Read the Quran. You will be back to the Bible.
You raise a really good point there, JC, in as much that the Bible defines Christianity, not Christians. And for people to understand what the Bible teaches and what Christianity is, you go to the source. That's where you get your answers from. 2 Timothy 3:16 reads, all scriptures inspired of God, beneficial for teaching. Obviously, to teach somebody who doesn't know what the Bible teaches, for reproving, well, that would be for correction, where if someone's erred, and they're for setting things straight. So if you have a discussion about doctrine, well, the Bible will define what the doctrine is, not opinion or external opinions. So what you're saying there, totally agree with JC, good point. So moving on to the next piece of news, for those that don't live in England, probably you may be aware of a certain guy that was arrested for praying outside an abortion clinic. Well, he's had his judgment recently. I'm just going to get to the article, if I can get there. I'm not sure why it's not moving quick enough. Here we go. So the reason why I put this etymology in here is because Paul has a root, possibly, it says a variant of Paul. Now, the reason why I brought this in is because the council that prosecuted Army veteran Adam Smith, Connor, was actually prosecuted by Christchurch and Poole Council. Christchurch and Poole, the etymology Paul. So you could say Christchurch and Paul Council prosecuted this guy for praying outside of a clinic. The irony of it. Wow. But the interesting thing is he's now been prosecuted, so it's now a criminal offence. He's been criminalised and fined £9,000. Now, the interest, I don't know if people are aware in England what's going on in England, but many of the councils that we have are actually bankrupt. And the thing is, with the Christchurch and Poole Council, they spent £90,000 on legal fees taking this man to court. He got convicted. His legal fees were paid by a charity, but he still has to pay the £9,000. What precedents do you think is being set here, guys?
Christianity is outlawed.
Yeah, exactly.
Abortion is legally mandated. Sorry.
So yeah, absolutely. So when you look at here, like the 150-meter buffer zones, and we discussed last week about having, say, imagery or dialogue that could be visibly seen in your own home, could now be a criminal offence where you can get taken to court and convicted, because people who are having an abortion may be offended. So they're not offended by having the abortion, they're offended by imagery or possible imagery or people thought crime, or basically people having a thought that they can't prove. In this instance, Mr. Smith actually admitted he was praying it silently inside his head. Was that a prudent thing to do? I don't know. What do you think, guys? Do you think he should have probably not said anything, or do you think it was a good thing that he actually admitted that he was praying with reference to his aborted child from many years
No, he's
ago?
being truthful, but this shows you that your UK local governments are turning evil, and they're prosecuting people for thought crimes. That's 1984.
Yeah, 1984 in 2024. What about you, JC? What are your thoughts on this of this situation with Mr. Smith?
Well, exactly the same as you guys. This is absolutely unprecedented, and it is absolutely ridiculous. You have so many people actually praying in public in the UK, according to all of the footage that I see, praying to Allah, and nothing happens. And even shouting Allahu Akbar, which of course most people don't know what that means, what it represents. And then a guy doing that, and he gets fined. It's like, hang on a minute, you were supposed to have a free country. So your country used to be so free that I could insult you and you could insult me back, and that's fine. There are just very few things that you couldn't do. But if I'm actually standing there and they say, hey, are you praying? And if I say no, okay, I can go. And if I say yes, I'm praying, it's like, but surely if you are going to prosecute someone for praying, that means that you are already, the system doesn't really believe in God in any way, because otherwise, how could they actually find you for doing something that expresses that you believe in God? That doesn't make any sense. So that means the system is very, let's say, atheist to a whole different level. And they see you doing something they disapprove of, and they say, okay, so what you are doing is not right. But how did you actually get there if they don't believe in it? What happens if I'm there, say, praying, and when they say, what are you doing? I say, I'm praying to, I don't know, Odin. Is there a problem with that? Am I going to be prosecuted? Or are they going to say, oh no, this guy is just crazy? What if I say I'm praying actually to Allah in my own head? Is that a problem? Or is it just, oh no, you are a Christian, and as a Christian, you're not allowed to do this? Where is that line? And the problem is, there
we
shouldn't
know
be
this
any
is
line.
targeted at Christianity.
Yeah.
You don't see, I don't think you see Muslim protests necessarily outside these clinics, or atheist protests, because the atheists are the ones promoting it. You don't see Sikhs or Hindus really doing so. I mean, this is, and also the entire enterprise of atheism is anti-Christian. It's not anti-Buddhist, it's anti-Christian. It's modeled on Christianity as an inversion of it.
Yeah, and if the thing is, in the UK, you used to be able to, not able, it was part of your culture, that you are you were always able to upset people. That's kind of like the whole point. You could say to somebody, if you're doing this, bad things are going to happen, and they will just say, well, go to hell, I don't care. Now, just to do something like that, which there is no violence, there is no ill intent. One of the things about laws and why laws are in place is when you do something that is bad, or something with bad intent. But that one, the intent is good, but people can get upset. So what?
But you're hurting an atheist's feelings. That's against the law. I mean, and the Christians' feelings don't matter, you bigot.
Yeah, but actually, you raised a very important point. An atheist, I mean, if I said, for example, to someone, if I went to the UK and said to somebody on the street, cowards don't go to Valhalla, will they get upset about that? And will they sue me? They will probably just think, I don't care. What are you talking about? Do I look like a Viking? But if I said, from a Christian point of view, if you do that, you're going to go to hell, then they can get upset and then sue me. That doesn't make any sense, because if they're upset about something like this, that means they're not Christians. It's as simple as that. People going to an abortion clinic, they are not going to be Christians. So why are they being upset about that? It just makes no sense. It really looks like they are targeting Christianity, and seeing all of the things going on in the UK, it's a very nefarious thing going on. And, well, get ready for what comes next, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, good point.
Yeah, it's interesting, just what you were saying there, Lloyd, about atheism being offended. I can't help but sort of draw comments from Richard Dawkins on things like this when he says that there's no such thing as free will, and your purpose in life is merely subjective. So I can't see how atheists can be offended by this, because do they choose to be offended? Well, that contradicts their worldview. And if there is a chemical reaction that predicates their emotions and what they feel is their emotions, then I don't quite. Then one could argue then they've got the wrong chemical composition, and therefore they've mutated incorrectly if they're offended by such small things. And they seem to be growing and getting offended in this day and age. And as you said, everything seems to be aimed.
They were born into the wrong chemicals.
Yeah, exactly that. Right. So I thought that was an interesting development for Mr. Smith. We've spoken about him a couple of times in the past. The poor guy's now got a £9,000 debt. And the council have wasted £80,000 of their own money, which they could have spent, housing somebody or repairing some of the roads with the potholes. But they decided to spend the money on legal fees. There you go. That should tell you something. When a council is willing to spend that amount of money to set a point about this situation about abortions, that's telling you there's a precedent that's being set there quite deliberately. Yeah. Right. So moving on then.
Let me bring up something before you go. This is from the Didache.
Should I stop sharing?
Oh, no, it's okay. You leave it like that. That's fine. I can switch over. This is from the Didache, which is a very early Christian book. I mean, it's now being regarded as perhaps the earliest Christian text written and distributed, and in some cases older than the Gospels. And in fact, it was considered as canon by some very early Christians. But the reason it wasn't included was that it seems to be a manual for how to be a Christian, how to conduct services, how to manage a church, rather than an actual gospel. So therefore, it was removed from the canon. But notice here in the second commandment of the teaching, you shall not commit murder. You shall not commit adultery, nor pederasty, nor fornication. You shall not steal, nor practice magic or witchcraft. And you shall not murder a child by abortion, nor kill that which is born. Now notice, today, you have abortion is a sacrament, not a sacrilege. And there are at least 5 states in the US, and this is being pushed by the left, post-birth abortion. This is legal in some locations.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about sacrament, I think you have to include verses like Exodus 21, 22 to 25, where it talks about the punishment for if there was a situation where a pregnant woman lost her child and there was a third party that was the source of the problem, like, for instance, a scuffle, as it were. Life for life. So the avenger had the right to take the life of the person whose child was lost, and that is in the Mosaic Law. So that should teach people God's view of an unborn child, that it is a serious life to him, in as much that if a woman lost a child as a result of a man's actions, he had to forfeit his life as compensation.
You know that the Didache was written as early. Scholars are now placing the Didache as early as the year 48, which is roughly 15 years after the crucifixion. So this is very, very early Christian document. So just out of interest, and it heavily emphasizes abortion.
Yeah.
Back to you, Thunderous. Screen shares yours.
Right. So. Right then. So just before you play the video, I just want to bring up some. I don't know if people know what things mean, but the video is going to bring out the word doula, and I'm not suggesting people don't know what it is, but I thought I'd bring it up anyway as to what doula means. So abortion doulas provide physical, emotional, or information support before, during, after an abortion. Support for an abortion doula could be like: help manage physical, emotional pain or discomfort, keep you comfy, fed and hydrated, distinguish common versus concerning symptoms, help you relax, give hugs or hold your hand, ask the questions that will provide info, simply being present and listening. So you don't need a qualification. Anybody can become a doula or somebody that assists in an abortion clinic.
It's affirmation. You're just providing gender affirmation. Sorry, abortion affirmation.
Abortion affirmation. Yeah, it's basically well done, for what you've done. That's what it's saying. So can you play the video, Lloyd?
Yeah. So let me see. I'm going to try and reshare with my audio. I'm going to end my screen share. I'm going to try and share with audio, but I occasionally have difficulty doing so. Let me see if this works. Please let me know if you hear the audio on the stream. If not, I will go to plan B. And Villainous says, oh, so you get cuddles when you kill your kid. Pretty much. This is someone, yeah, very much so, Villainous. So everyone, please let me know immediately that you can hear the audio with a 1. A 2, if there's no audio, then I will switch to plan B. It's 2 minutes and 20 seconds long.
If Jesus were here today, he would be a clinic escort, distracting women from the hatred of the protesters. Or an abortion doula, holding women's hands and offering support and love as they end their pregnancies. And I expect he would have a stern word for self-righteous legislators who use abortion as a political issue rather than showing compassion for the people seeking abortions. Today, on this Roe Sunday, I wanted to share some of the stories we have collected because these are the sacred stories of women's lives. If Jesus were giving his sermon today, he might also have said, "Blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness." I have been pregnant 4 times. I have had 2 abortions, and I have 2 amazing children. Each of my reproductive decisions, to have children and not to have children, were sacred decisions because they reflect the moral responsibility of reproductive power that is part of our inheritance as human creatures. Each of you has a reproductive story. And given that 1/4 of American women will have an abortion by the age of 45, I imagine some of your reproductive journeys also include abortion. Blessed are those who end pregnancies, for they will be known for their loving kindness. Reimagining our theological understanding of abortion is essential to addressing the violence that is being done to people across the country in the name of Christianity. In the face of the rampant reproductive injustice in our society, what does God require of us? Amen.
Amen. Okay. I would like to just say that thank you to people in the chat for reading my mind, so it avoids me saying the things again. So wow.
That was disturbing. I've heard it before, and there's others like it. And she was wearing a Planned Parenthood shawl, I believe, or scarf.
How dare
You
she?
really have.
No. There's a different one. No, there's a different one, which is even worse, where she's wearing a Planned Parenthood scarf, and it's got the big Planned Parenthood logo, and it's even more horrific than this one.
No, you can really imagine what her attitude would be if she was to have a conversation with the guy that was caught praying silently in his head outside an abortion clinic. What kind of conversation do you think the 2 of them would have? The thing is, for me, with this Rebecca Todd Peters, is that she's a minister for the Presbyterian Church in her local state. The thing is, if she's speaking like that, first of all, you've done a fantastic discussion on this previously about or women ordained in the organization. It's just not allowed. Paul made it clear. So there's that as an issue. Then we have her making these bold statements. She's represented. I think what I'm trying to say, she's basically speaking the party line of what that denomination believes then, because there hasn't been any outcry or outrage or response from the church saying that she doesn't speak on behalf of the church when she makes comments like this. So it's clear she does speak on behalf of the church and that denomination as far as what her comments are. And I find it particularly outrageous when she says, when you consider Jesus gave his life as a ransom for many, that he would agree with abortion. I think the comments that people are making in the chat, there's no need for me to continue any further, because I think everybody's pretty much on the same sheet as me.
Same page, yeah.
But what was your thoughts when you first listened to her, Lloyd? I was outraged when I first listened to her, but what was yours?
I watched this one, I believe, and then I watched another one where she's wearing the Planned Parenthood. She's got this Planned Parenthood thing on, and it's pink, and it's got the PP logo quite big. And then she says, yeah, that abortion is like a sacred thing, because she has a different message. She says something like, if you have a child, you need to commit to that child and love the child, and but if you have a child that you don't expect, you're not going to treat that child correctly, and God would forbid that. God would be against that, because you got a child by accident. It wasn't planned. So God would support you in your desire to cease that, to stop that pregnancy, because that would be a sin to bring that child into the world, because you didn't want that child. This would be a burden on you, and God understands that, and God wouldn't want that either. God supports you in that. And it was just the most disgusting message.
Yeah, and the thing is, you see, where it doesn't bode well when people are, I think Ezekiel says, sighing and groaning over the detestable things that are being done on the earth. It doesn't bode well for people who want to maybe start looking for a path towards truth, and you've got denominations like this creating a schism and creating a confusion for people. A person listening to that who maybe doesn't have a God belief or is searching for the truth, what is their reaction going to be when they listen to ministers like this speak like this? It has an adverse effect. It creates how does a person then, if they're looking for truth, listen to somebody like her? Where do they go? Because their perception could be, well, do all churches teach this? Do they all speak like this?
There's a really good speaker. I can't remember her name right now, but she's written some great stuff, and she gives great interviews where she discusses how the woke and the socialists, which is effectively the same thing, your commies and your woke, have made a specific effort to infiltrate the church, just as they've gone into universities, schools, kindergartens, policing, judiciary, everything. They've also made the specific effort to infiltrate the churches. So the woke and the socialists, the same thing, are in the church. And we need to understand this. And you said something earlier, I don't want to really get into a deep discussion about this, but you said everything needs to be biblical. Here's the thing, though. Who interprets that Bible? Who interprets what the ultimate meaning is? Now, if it's Tom, Dick, and Harry, they're all going to come up with their own idea, and that leads to relativism. So there needs to be an organization, namely the church, because you just said, what is the position of her church? Because the church is the authority. And there's too many people that believe that their personal opinion, their personal revelation, their private revelation is the ultimate arbiter of truth, whereas that just leads to relativism. That just leads to everyone fighting over what that book means, because, whereas they don't believe, they believe that the Holy Spirit made them a perfect understander of the Bible, but they do not believe that the Holy Spirit can protect an organization, namely the church. So, so we need to understand that there needs to be, at the end of the day, an ultimate arbiter of meaning, of truth, that has to be retained in an ultimate organization. And what does her church say? Because I've asked many people on the chat, in the comments, I've had people come on and go, blah, 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 Jesus was actually a space alien, right? And then I'll ask them, okay, what does your church say? And then invariably, they turn out to be part of a one-man cult. namely just themselves as members. And that's just loopy because it's only them. What does your church say? What is the organization that you belong to? Because if everyone has an opinion, well, everyone has an a-hole as well, and we don't want to see those. So, where's the authority in that opinion?
What you're saying, totally agree with you, because it reminds me of scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10, where it says that you should be fitly united in the same mind and in the same line of thought. So the body, the organization, the church, the congregation should be, as you said there should be sort of like a code, as it were, that everybody agrees to uphold. Yeah, absolutely agree with you, dude.
Yeah, and also Villainous said something very wise here. I would like to cleanse myself of the guilt of killing my two kids, by getting the audience to agree or to kill theirs, and it's shocking. Your thoughts, JC?
Well, this lady, I'm still I'm not feeling too well with her words. I don't understand them. How dare she actually say the things that she did? They don't make any sense. But when she says, if Jesus was around today, he would be like all for it. Okay. According to whom? This is just like what you said before, according to whom? So what verse in the Bible says that if Jesus was around today, he would be super happy with that? Because she needs to have the interpretation from some place, and that place must be the Bible. So can you imagine what verse she was having in her mind when she said those very, very stupid words?
The Satanic Bible or the Darwinian Bible,
Right. So it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever of her actually saying that.
Yeah.
And yes, if she has her political agendas, she doesn't sound like a Christian at all. Like you said before, actually, Floyd, when you said about the Pope, that when people look at the Pope, whether they are Catholic or not, they would see him as this perfect example of first righteousness, and also a person who would probably know the Bible inside and out more than anyone else in the world. Like they would know exactly what every single word of it means. So when they say something that is actually not there, it feels weird. So with this lady, if she's there and she's on a podium and she's speaking to other people, she's supposed to be teaching things that are in the Bible, whether they're controversial or not. If she says something that is not all right, but what was she quoting?
The Pope is actually not meant to reinterpret. The Pope is meant to apply. The Pope is meant to apply tradition, which is the understanding passed down, and he's supposed to apply that tradition to new situations. But he's not meant to change. To disrupt things that are known to be foundational. I just want to bring up something that's maybe not as well explained as I could, but we need to know who's the authority. What is her authority? And I want to encourage the guys to read this book. It's in my archive, Against the Protestant Gnostics. I promised some months ago I should do a talk on Protestant Gnostics. For those of you who are not familiar with how Gnostics incredibly imitate the church, you need to. There's a couple of videos on YouTube. You have some. There's the Gnostic Catholic Church. It's not Catholic at all. It's Gnostic. But you need to listen to some of their sermons. And I promise you, it's going to take 5 minutes before you figure out that this is not Christian at all. When you listen to them talk, you would swear this is biblical. Jesus himself is talking to you. This is 100% Christian. And then eventually you'll go like, wait, that was a bit weird. And then you're like, not sure. And it takes like 5 to 10 minutes before you realize, good grief, this is not remotely Christian. It's some crazy new age synthesis. So, but this book talks about these things against the Protestant Gnostics, because he says the Gnostics have infiltrated very clearly. And he goes on with, he illustrates exactly how Protestant churches in the US, because remember, I've already covered before that something like 60% of Protestants in the US don't believe that Jesus is God. That's like 60% or something or something like that. Or like 30% of them don't believe in Jesus as God or the Son of God in the US. That's crazy statistics. So well worth reading for those who aren't familiar with this.
Right, so that's over to you now, Lloyd. I've brought up a couple of articles that I'm interested in this week.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So, guys, I've got two things to raise, and then yeah, we can call it a day because I know you're not well, Thunderous. Uh, yeah, my heart. So, the Christians in the UK are respectful and tolerant people. They allow us Muslims into their churches for iftar dinner, and of course, we know that the Muslims are disrespectful and intolerant, and they bring children into their mosques so that they can mislead and manipulate them into becoming Muslims. We also know that they threaten to burn down police stations if they don't release Muslims who are guilty of violent crimes. And we also know that Islam demands that it is dominant over all other religions, that everyone else is dirty, etc., etc. So the people in the UK are also extremely angry and upset with the two tiers of treatment with Muslims and non-Muslims, locals and foreigners like Muslims from Pakistan. And the only reason is that, as you know, Muslims are constantly claiming that white people are racist, and that is not true because white people are the least racist people on the planet. And of course, we've got this issue where they are being tolerant and trying to hope that there will be a quid pro quo, and there's not a quid pro quo. And also, we can assume it's a fair guess to make that it's Muslims who are burning down all of the churches in the UK, in France, in Canada. So, with hundreds of churches already burning in France, over 120 churches in Canada, it's Muslims doing it because Muslims are disrespectful and intolerant, and of course, incredibly violent because of the doctrine. So,
Can I
yeah.
can I
Yep.
can I just add something on that, Lloyd?
And also, do the mosques in the UK have Christmas dinner for the Christians? Do they? Do you? Because no, you obviously have a very, very different view of Christianity, and yeah, we're tired of the deception. Go on, Thunderous.
Yeah, I was just saying, just another contribution that Islam has made, apart from the many laws that have been changed. For instance, how do you define kidnapping, so on and so forth, and honor killings and so on. Something came to light this week. I was actually going to mention it today, but I thought I might leave it till next week. But the discussion that you've just brought up now has prompted me to maybe mention it today, and that England now has something like 16 locations within the NHS around the country dealing with female genital mutilation. What religion mutilates the genitalia of women? What religion is that?
Islam.
And to have
Islam.
16, to have 16, I think something like 7 of them are in London, the 3 or 4 are in Birmingham. So they're in Muslim locations, Islamic community locations. How bad do you think the problem is when you have 16 clinics dealing with this situation, Lloyd?
Yeah. So look, he's saying here, as a Muslim, I'm proud that our countries do not allow religious freedom. And as a Christian and as a Westerner, I will be happy when Western countries do not allow Islamic freedom, because Islam is violent. It is Muslims who take trucks and drive into Christmas markets to murder Christians. Muslims do that. It is Muslims who take weapons and then run into bridges in Western countries and murder people with knives. And yeah, it is Muslims who also, yeah, at the Taylor Swift concerts in, I believe it was in Austria, who wanted to cause a mass casualty event because Muslims are willing to use violence because they believe that violence is holy. Violence against the dirty kafir is a holy act, and they will get reward from Allah for that. So you see, this is hypocrisy, and here you can see this Muslim is showing the true colors of Islam. He's a true believer. He is speaking in the truth of the doctrine. So he's proud that these countries do not allow religious freedom. Well, they are genociding. They're literally murdering the Christians. Like in Nigeria last year, Muslims murdered 8,000 Christians. In the last few years, they've murdered something like, I believe it's 60,000 Christians in Nigeria have been murdered by Muslims like this person here. My heart finds peace and solace in being a murderer, this person. So what we need to do is, you see, this person is a violent, depraved psychopath, right? And this is, I think I've tolerated this person often enough now, and I think that's enough of them.
Don't remove him just yet. I have a word for our
no, it's fine. Speak. Go ahead.
Mind.
Go ahead. I've removed them, but go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. This so for our little friend here. So he should really realize something that is very, very obvious. And it is that according to his own scriptures, God will send a prophet and then a prophet after prophet, lots and lots and lots of prophets, and then Messiah, somebody different to anything that had come before, born without a paternal father, someone that does miracle after miracle after miracle, who, according to their own scriptures, was so valuable that was never even allowed to die. He was actually taken. Sorry, now I have feedback on your share. If you would be so kind to just remove the screen share for a second.
Sure.
I'm getting a lot of feedback. Okay, yeah, sorry. So all of those prophets, then a Messiah, someone different to everything else that had come before. And then, oh, the Messiah has actually failed, so let me actually send a prophet. And then that prophet, or what comes as a result of that guy that comes after the Messiah, because, you know, God, he who knows present, past, and future, would not realize that actually the Messiah, the most important one in the whole line, actually fails, and somebody comes after, and their mission is, now, you know, the children of Israel, those who God said they were his children, and he who blesses the children of Israel will be blessed, and he who curses the children of Israel will be cursed. Now kill them all. I'm just fed up that they are still playing silly buggers. It's like, so to this brother, he, open your eyes. It's as simple as that. Read the Bible. God would not actually tell you start killing everything that moves until everyone submits to God. It's supposed to be free will, which they've told you it doesn't exist. Read the Bible and open your eyes. Don't think that you are on the side of the good guys. There isn't 72 virgins waiting for you in heaven. You are not going up there. And the deflowering is happening the other way around in hell. So wake up. That's that.
No. So understand, Islam has violent intentions. Individual Muslims may not, but this one showed us exactly what Islam wants. Showed us he is emulating exactly the teachings of Islam by being a violent, murderous psychopath. And we've spoken before about Nikolai Sennels, how Islam creates psychopaths. And psychopathy is also linked with narcissism. So hold on, let us ban this little fool again. So he likes murder. Now notice, this is a very well-known psychologist who has analyzed Muslims, and he's fully aware that Islam creates psychopaths like our friend here. So this is the Danish psychologist Nikolai Sennels, and he studied the ideology of Islam and how it affects Muslims. He has concluded it creates monsters and psychopaths. So let me bring that up. So I promised to talk about this, and also thanks to Andrew. He's not in the chat today. And also, if this Muslim appears again, just please ban him right away. There's no point having him. He doesn't add anything of value. We already know that he's a disgusting monster. So, yeah. Now, Nikolai Sennels shows us how Islam fosters psychological conditions that resemble or become psychopathy, right? That practices within Islam contribute to the development of narcissistic and psychopathic traits in individuals. So he speaks of mental health. Islam actually creates mental health conditions. So key points raised. Authoritarian ideologies. He claims that the authoritarian nature of Islam, inhibits personal emotional development and leads to characteristics associated with psychopathy. Authoritarian structures do not promote self-reflection. So, and Miss My Heart finds, just delete him again, please, because he's obviously very, very desperate. But notice also that we are actually very happy to see that Hamas is being destroyed. We're very happy to see that the Iranian government is losing its power. We're very happy to see how Hezbollah is being destroyed. And that those people who support Hezbollah, those people who support Hamas, and don't forget, something like 75+% of Palestinians are jihadis that actively support and act as these human shields for Hamas. They believe that they are sacrificing their 5-year-old kids, their sons and daughters, for the purpose of victory for Allah. These people are themselves psychopathic murderers who are willing to indulge in child sacrifice of their children because they believe that murdering all Israelis is a holy act. So you've got these people who, if they want to actively, as civilians, actively engage with a terrorist organization, then if they suffer the consequences of their actions, that is fine. We have to accept that they made that choice, and if they suffer, that is their choice. We would prefer they just return the hostages. We would prefer they just lay down their arms. However, again, they've made a choice. They voted for, they supported, they actively, financially, and otherwise support a terrorist organization, a Muslim terrorist organization. There's a reason why most terrorist organizations in the world are Muslim. The top 20 religious terror organizations are all Muslim for a reason. Anyway, back to that. So, authoritarian structures do not promote self-reflection or empathy, which are critical for healthy psychological development. So, Islam creates unhealthy psychological development. Lack of emotional expression. He argues that cultural practices are prevalent in Islamic communities discourage the expression of emotions. And because they're tribal, they follow the will of the tribe. They don't develop as an individual. They need to model themselves after Muhammad. In other words, they're carbon copies. They're clones of a single psychopathic individual. This repression leads individuals to develop a facade of emotional detachment, resembling traits found in psychopathy. Your thoughts, guys, before I continue with this?
My first thought that came to my mind is that when you look at countries for human rights abuses, poverty, and education, poor healthcare, women's rights. If you was to look at the top 10, I wonder how many would actually be Islamic countries. If you looking at what you've just read there, that would fit that context as well.
Yeah, and well, this is a topic that is actually very close to my heart. I understand this quite a bit, and I have done quite a bit of research as well. And yeah, everything that you're reading, of course, is just spot on. And if we wanted to have a proper conversation about this, it could last even days, because we would go through every single thing that they are made to do, and when, and how you can get somebody from basically taking the Shahada all the way up to being a jihadist, and all of the different steps in the middle. The majority of Muslims that we know, they are in the middle, and in Europe, they are actually very low on that scale. But it is a process, and you can see what happens when somebody's actually going very high up towards that jihadist level. So, but yeah.
Yeah. So, ingrained violence and control. Sennels highlights that teachings within Islam endorse violence and control and can foster aggressive behaviors in individuals. So remember, there's a truism within psychology that if you cannot control your own emotions, you try to control other people. And this is definitely something that we see. Such teachings, he suggests, contribute to the normalization of narcissistic and antisocial traits. Implications of community and identity. He discusses how Islam promotes a superiority over non-Muslims. And remember, within Islamic teachings, we are the kafir, we are the dirty, the unclean. God hates us, and they are to hate those whom Allah hates. And that's what they teach, right? They hate the ones that Allah hates, and Allah rewards them for this. And he discusses how Islam promotes a sense of superiority over non-Muslims, potentially enhancing narcissistic traits. This worldview can further alienate individuals from empathetic relations with others. Notice how he was gloating happily over the murder, the dispossession, the trauma, the pain of people that his own fellow ideologues are murdering and literally genociding. The murder of Christians has been recognized as a worldwide genocide. It is the most harmed group. It is the most endangered group in the world. And what's happening in Nigeria is nothing short of a true genocide and an ethnic cleansing. Notice here, he has no empathy for that. He's happy about that. At some point, though, and I say this is very sad, but it's going to be very true. If we're going to have to choose sides and the other side is going to laugh and gloat when our side is being hurt, if the tribal side, as opposed to the inclusive side, remember, we're the inclusive ones who invite them to have their iftar, right? Again, as you stated, they don't allow us to go and have Christmas in their mosques, but that we allow them to have iftar in the church. We're the inclusive side. They are the ones who are tribal. They're the ones who hate us, who actively are taught and required to hate us. If they're the ones who are going to gloat and smile and celebrate when we are killed at some point, this is going to turn into an us versus them scenario. And what's good for the goose may well be good for the gander. And if that happens, then I think we will see things change very, very rapidly. The only reason that Islam is winning is, one, it obviously has bribed its way with its oil money into the government. And two, we as Westerners are tolerant. We've let them get away with it. If we decide not to, that is a giant they don't want to wake up. That is a tidal wave they don't want to face. Your thoughts on that, Thunderous and JC?
No, there wasn't really much I could add on to that, other than when you were talking about the it's and us and them. From my experience being raised as a Muslim, that's from as soon as you're a toddler. You know, you won't be the way they teach it is that the outside society will not accept you. You know these people won't say you'll never be accepted by them, and so the formulation of the mind is done at a very early age. And then when you're forced to go to Quran school, it's interesting that of all the religious ideologies I've seen, Islam is the only one that teaches with violence. So you're reprimanded harshly, and if not, you will get the cane or you'll be hit with a stick on your back, as a teaching method of how to recite the Quran. So as you said, it doesn't allow for emotional development or emotional expression. So everything is contained internally, and there's you can't, if you can't express yourself with love, normally the byproduct is you express yourself with anger and rage as a frustration.
Nowhere in the Quran does it teach love for non-Muslims, whereas we are taught as Christians to love thy neighbor, even love thy enemy. This man is our enemy. We need to recognize this. He is an enemy, and you have to treat him as such. Now, we love him, but we also love the truth. We love our families, and we would prefer not to make war, but there will come a point when we will make war, and this will be, it'll be a very short one, and I think you need to, well, it's not going to go well, and we know where the power lies at the end of the day, unfortunately. So consequences for mental health. The absence of meaningful social connections and emotional support within Islamic culture can lead to psychological issues, including anxiety and depression, which is masked by narcissistic behaviors. And now we go to the Mayo Clinic. Now, the Mayo Clinic, this is an article that I took from the Mayo Clinic on narcissistic behavior and characteristics. The Mayo Clinic's paper on narcissistic personality disorder provides substantial corroboration for several claims made by Nikolai Sennels. Cultural influence on personality disorders. The Mayo Clinic notes that cultural and environmental influences such as authoritarian parenting styles can contribute to developing NPD. This supports his assertion about the role of authoritarian ideologies within Islam. So authoritarianism produces psychopaths, maladjusted psychopaths. Impact of emotional detachment. Narcissism is often characterized by a lack of emotional connection and empathy, aligning with Sennels' claim regarding the consequences of suppressed emotional expression in Islamic context. They taught not to love thy neighbor. They taught not to love thy enemy. We don't act out of hatred. Notice he was acting out of hatred, gleefully so. But at some point, we cannot allow evil to prevail. We cannot allow ourselves to be killed for the sake of evil. We cannot stand by in the presence of this ongoing evil, of this threat. So, association with aggressive behaviors. The Mayo Clinic discusses how individuals with NPD are likely to exhibit aggression and a need for control, paralleling Sennels' concerns about teachings that endorse violence and dominance. And they're only getting away with it because we let them. When that changes, when that political will changes, I think we will see a slightly different view. Your thoughts before I finish on this? I've only got a couple more points.
Well, for me, because Thunderous, I think, has just dropped off, probably something with the, oh no, he's back? No, internet. Is that you mentioned about the kuffars. So obviously Muslims, they are trained to hate the Jews, the Christians, and everybody else, including most Muslims. But the one word that everybody knows, even if they are not Arabic speakers, is kuffars, which means coverers, those that cover the truth. So I wonder what is going to happen when they actually find out that the coverers are in fact their imams and their scholars who have not told them that there are multiple books, not just the one Quran. When they told them that it changed from day one, when they told them that actually Muhammad didn't even exist, he was a compilation from many other things. What happens when they realize that their scholars and their imams have not told them a single thing that was true, and the goal of that was so that they would pay their taxes and that they would go and die for that ideology, and everything was a lie? What will happen when en masse, they actually realize that the kuffar are in fact the people inside of Islam? Food for thought.
I would. The only thing I'd say on that, JC, is that I remember several years ago on another show that Lloyd and myself used to be on. The comment was that the Yassakadi holds in the narrative would be the death knell for Islam. It hasn't proven true. I think the idea, the mindset of the Muslim is that no matter what evidence you provide, it will have no impact. You know, the cognitive dissonance and the mental gymnastics, the rationalization that they go through is already there. They'll just throw whatever information under the bus. I personally don't see there. I'm not suggesting all Muslims. There are individuals in there, but as a rule, your comments about whether Muhammad existed or not, that'll have no impact, even if it was proven. I think the concern that I've got is if laws are going to be passed as to make it illegal, you know, Islamophobia as an example, and Islamophobia is going to be defined as attacking Muslimness. The concern for me is that when you get into academia, where there is no red line, how far does academia go in exposing Islam or revealing things about Islam or researching Islam from an archaeological point of view, from a moral point of view, from any point of view? Who would willingly put their lives you know, because you're dealing with an ideology where if you say anything or prove anything against it, you know, blood has to be spilt. That's the concern for me.
You know that it's Yuri Bezmenov stated that these people are already contaminated. There's nothing you can do. It's dyed in the wool. There's nothing you can do about them. You simply have to acknowledge who they are and contain them. And I think this is what we need to do. We need to mitigate our losses. We need to manage our risks with these people. The woke as well. These are enemies, whether they know it or not. And we need to understand that if we are going to survive as a culture, we are going to have to control these people, right? We're going to have to mitigate their ability. Now, of course, you can try and reach out to them and maybe change them. But for those who are hardcore, there's very little you can do. When I was in the UAE, there were many of these Syrian refugees and others that wanted to come over to the UAE because it's such a prosperous, well-run country. And the UAE government stated, no, these people are damaged. These are psychologically damaged people. We will be very careful who we let in because we're not going to bring psychologically damaged people who view violence as normal. They stated that very openly. And they said, no, you stay out of our country because you are not, even though these were Muslims, they're like, you are not compatible with us. You are not one of us. You have a different set of values than we do. And they were very blunt about it. And we as Westerners have to learn to become extremely open and blunt about these facts, that you cannot allow, it's like willfully accepting a cancer that's going to mutate and spread into your society. You don't allow that. You don't inject that into your society and think that you will not have major disruptions. We have to be honest about this, as uncomfortable and as unpleasant as that may be. I think, JC, your thoughts on that, and Thunderous, and then I'll finish with this, and then we can call it a day, I think. Yeah.
Well, my faith is very heavily on Muslims, actually. The majority of them. I know that there are some that they have already crossed the lines, and pretty much are those that have already been either made to do something that is already unforgivable, or they were already psychopaths to begin with, because it's a genetic thing more than anything else. The other thing is more sociopathy. But I think that the majority of Muslims, particularly in Europe, most of them, they're actually not bad. They have been pretty much Christianized. That's why they are not behaving, the majority of them, like people do in very hardcore countries, or rather like the Taliban or like ISIS. They don't behave like that. So I reckon that when they find out en masse that the whole thing, that they have been lied to, they will be the ones that will be able to stop the other ones, the more hardcore ones, because they act as a group, as a pack. So if you, for example, now convert a Muslim, or you get a Muslim out of Islam, he's still going to pretend to be a Muslim, because otherwise he will lose everything in his life, his family, maybe even his own life. But if you were to actually get everybody in a whole city, then it's a different game, because everybody is in it together. And if then you have a very small proportion of those who are already radicals, the majority of those now ex-Muslims will be able to really do something about it, because they will know, you're my cousin, sit down here, you need to open your eyes. It is about the big numbers, and I don't think that most Muslims will be even in a position to ever cross that line into being horrible.
Well,
not in Europe, but when there
think-
is so much stuff going on in Europe right now, that's why we need to really hurry up and get every Muslim out of it, because all of this violence that keeps increasing in Europe is very dangerous. Every time that something like this happens, more Muslims will turn to becoming radicals. So the game is that it's a race against time to get Muslims to open their eyes, so they can get the more radicals, the more radicalized ones out of it. So my faith is with them. Probably
in
wrongly.
Iran, you're looking at there's huge amounts of apostasy. There are these incredible videos of Sunni imams talking about the tsunami of apostasy in the West. So there is a lot of it. There's a great deal of it, and at some point, I think it's going to rise. I mean, we know no one likes Islam. I mean, no one in the West likes it. Anyone who's actually looked at it doesn't like it. So yeah, I mean, it's horrific. Final couple of points here. So the Mayo Clinic. So hold on. The concept of feeling superior to others is a common trait amongst individuals with narcissistic tendencies, which resonates with Senel's observation about the implications of community identity within Islam. I mean, this person has no empathy, as we can see. They have no empathy. They have no sympathy. They are reveling in the idea of violence. So mental health issues. The Mayo Clinic explains that those with narcissism often experience anxiety and depression due to their challenges in forming genuine relationships. Which is why they're so happy to literally beat their wives, because that's how you take out your frustrations, right? Women and children first, you know? This correlates with Senel's argument about the emotional ramifications of narcissism within Islamic cultural frameworks. Conclusion: Dr. Nikolai Senel's assessment of how Islam may contribute to psychopathic traits is a compelling argument that intertwines cultural and psychological dimensions. The insights from the Mayo Clinic underscores the complexity of these issues, right? That these, shall we say, the religious aspects of Islam and mental health are deeply interconnected. And we need to take this into account when approaching Islam, that these people, many of them willingly embrace psychopathy. They have to. They have to become a psychopath if they're going to become the kind of murderous jihadis that Islam wants them to be. So that's my final point here, and I think we've seen it on the channel. And I think we need to be honest about the fact that Islam it should not be accepted in polite society. It is not to be tolerated. It is a political ideology akin to Nazism, akin to the worst of Stalinist and Leninist communism, and it should be viewed in the same light. It is destructive, it is cancerous, and it must be destroyed. It must be banned from our Western culture. And if it wants to be here, we have to apply very strict controls over it. Yeah, your thoughts, guys, and we'll call it a night here.
Yeah, with what, just to add on with what you're saying there, Lloyd. I mean, in my summary would be, if Darwin atheism was the crown that Satan wears, then Islam would be the jewel in Satan's crown. When you look at the traits of this ideology, what staggers me though is it's got 1400 years of history that can be verified. Its impact wherever it's gone. There isn't a country today on earth where there's an Islamic community is manifest and there isn't tension, schism, friction, hostility, so on and so forth, or the ghettoization of the local area that they've managed to infest. We have no-go zones as well, created by Islam. for me personally, when I look at immigration and fighting age men going over into Europe and into England and Ireland, I don't see that as an accident. Personally speaking, I see this as a deliberate act to undermine Europe. How that's going to be manifest later on, we'll have to wait and see. But for me, it's a case of using Islam for problem, reaction, solution. So they're creating a problem, they'll wait for the reaction, then they'll offer a solution. For me, there's an end game agenda, and Islam is the tool being used to get to that end game agenda. So I don't know how that sounds with you guys, but for me, that's how I perceive it.
I agree with you, although I will say that David Icke, who uses that term, and it's a very reasonable point that he makes about problem, reaction, solution. When he talks about Islam, he's clueless. He has no idea what he's talking about.
No.
Whenever I hear him talk about Islam, I cringe, because the man is an idiot on that topic, and many others too, by the way. I mean, he believes Jesus never existed and a whole bunch of other things. So,
JC?
Okay, final word to you, JC.
Well, Thunderous, I totally agree with what you have said when you said about a tool that is Islam feels almost like it's a tool being used. I agree with you 100%. What worries me is that I don't know who is the tool master. Who is actually doing it? Is that your own government actually trying to play with that? Is it Islamists? Is it the Russians? Is it space aliens? Who is making all of that happen? It certainly doesn't feel like it's a coincidence.
But also some very motivated Muslims. These people are true believers.
Yeah, but the whole thing doesn't actually make sense that it's happening like right now in these numbers, and there is so much like covering up. So absolutely no idea what is going on. I do have the feeling that maybe it's simply Europe has made some very, very poor mistakes, and the Islamists are just using that to create a little bit more of chaos, because they're very good at creating chaos. So Europe making a mistake, and then Islamists really just making it a little bit worse, because they are very good at that. And about your comment, Lloyd, I agreed with everything that you said except for one word. This is just in my personality. When you said about banning Islam, I think we're just way past that point. If a country had like 0.5% of the population being Muslim, yes, ban it, close all of the mosques if you have any, and just say no Islam allowed. That's absolutely fine. But Europe has gone past that point. Now there is just way too many Muslims. If they tried to do that, and one country, any of them, they decide to ban it, there will be blood. They will really have a really huge reaction. They will still not win, but there will be a lot of blood
you may
on
not be
both
able
sides.
to avoid that. That may well be unavoidable. And if there's something we've learned throughout history, is that European countries are fantastic at industrial level termination of life when they feel like it.
Yes, and I totally agree with that. And not on that it should be done, but I agree that it has happened. But I thought that maybe, just maybe, this one time, instead of going there, we actually managed to step in and stop it. And that would be a very new thing, because in the past, the solution to everything has been murder.
Yeah.
But maybe we managed to find a way of
There's
making
only
all
one
of this.
solution: evangelization. Train specially trained priests and send them out there to evangelize.
Yes.
Get them all to convert. That's the only way. Without bullets, that's the only way.
Yes, but particularly with Muslims, is that they have been made to see Christianity as the enemy. They will not actually listen to a priest. They will need to be shown the truth by saying, look, all of this is fabricated. You are not worshiping God, man. You're actually worshiping Satan. And then they will try to look for the truth. And then, yes, obviously, they have to be evangelized.
Look, we
but
have to say no. I mean, the popular will has to change, and the political will has to come behind it. And people have to say, look, no, we're not having this. We're tearing down those mosques. We're not allowing any new mosques. We're going to roll back as many mosques as possible. And Islam, if you want it, these are the terms, these are the conditions. You step out of line, bang, we're closing another mosque. There needs to be penalties. We need to understand the truth about it. And it is not it should not be allowed in our countries. It is invasive. And yeah, so guys, but before we get too controversial or too fiery, the Great Commission, yes. So guys, should we call it a night here? I was going to do one more topic, but I think we can call it a night. I can do that next time. So yeah.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you, Lloyd, for allowing me to come on your channel on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you for that. And JC, really enjoy your company and your comments on the and hopefully you'll be a regular feature on the show as well on the Sunday.
Yeah.
Thank you both. It's always a pleasure to be here, never a chore. So feel free to give me a ring whenever actually you guys want a conversation. I'll be happy to join if I'm free at that time. And I hope that people watching have actually enjoyed us throwing some ideas there and reacting to those somewhat controversial topics.
Yeah, Mary Alex says it's easier to kick them out than to preach to them, Lloyd. So look, so be it then. If that's what it comes down to, we need to understand the threat we are dealing with. And we see what a mess the Middle East is. Hamas, Palestine, Hezbollah, Lebanon. I've been to those places. It's a mess. So guys, thank you very much for joining us here on the Thunder Room, named for our esteemed colleague, the Thunderous One. Thank you, Thunderous, for preparing this, and thank you for joining us. Stacey and audience, thank you very much. Please leave your comments down below. Islam needs to be banned, if not banned, destroyed. And guys, thank you very much for joining us here and for all the kind comments and for supporting the channel. Let your friends know, share, like, subscribe, support our colleague here with his books. Find him on Amazon, and we shall see you guys again soon. Take care, guys. Good night.
Thank you
God
all.
bless.
Good night.